Across the United States, hundreds of thousands of workers and retirees, they're scared. They're scared for the future, they're scared for their families, and they're scared for themselves. These workers and retirees did everything right. They played by the rules. They worked for years, if not decades, often in labor-intensive jobs, and they responsibly planned for the future by putting money into their pensions only to have their retirement security ripped away. This is a story that's happening across North Dakota and happening across America. Harsh and senseless proposed cuts to Central State's pension plan, a multi-employer pension fund, could rip away the retirement of workers and retirees in the trucking, UPS package and delivery, and grocery supply industries. These cuts could impact more than 2,000 North Dakota families, and across the country, 400,000 retirees who could see their pensions slashed up to 60%. Many of these workers have been forced to retire because of decades of lifting packages over 100 pounds every day. These jobs took hard tolls on their bodies, but they were able to earn a living, support their families, and put food on the table each night. They knew that because they were saving for retirement through their pensions, they would be taken care of in later years. They would be able to enjoy their later years hunting and fishing with their grandchildren. They would be able to enjoy their later years by taking care of their family and their loved ones. Unfortunately, that security is evaporating. I recently met with Teamsters and union workers and retirees in Bismarck and in Fargo. Their stories, quite honestly, were heartbreaking. They couldn't understand how, if they did everything right, why was their retirement being taken away from them? They can't live in a country that just enables these workers and retirees to be left behind. They can't understand who is fighting for them. They and we must stand up and say, this is wrong. We must stand up for hard work, and we must protect their pensions and make sure all North Dakotans have a secure retirement. So I want to tell just a few of their stories today. I'm going to start with Dennis Gainsforth from Jamestown. He worked for UPS for 31 years. He needs surgery on one of his knees because of his decades as a night mechanic. Dennis is also helping financially take care of his son, who had a stroke, and his wife, who needs back surgery. Under the proposed cuts, his pension would be slashed by 50%. As a result, Dennis, who is 72 years old, is now back at work driving a public bus in Jamestown. Tina Kramer from Mandan was a member of the Teamsters, working as a secretary for the local union for 25 years, through which all of that she earned a pension. Her husband was a member of the steelworkers and worked for Bobcat for about 30 years as a forklift driver, and he also was earning a pension. Several years ago, both of them retired, and soon after, Tina's husband suddenly passed away. Tina lost her husband's pension and now has to rely solely on her pension. But under these proposed cuts, Tina's pension would be cut by almost 60%. Tina has just a little bit of savings, which she has already had to dip into every month to pay her bills for groceries and to pay her property taxes. Under the proposed pension cuts, it could only get worse for Tina. Bob Berg, just from north of Fargo, worked at UPS for over 30 years delivering packages, many of which could weigh up to 150 pounds. Because of the hard labor of his job, he had surgery on both knees, his hands, 5 hernia operations, and back problems, forcing him into early retirement. And now his medical bills are skyrocketing. He receives $2,200 a month under the pension plan, but with the cuts, he would just receive $1,100 $150, a 50% reduction. Mark Rothschilder from Mandan worked as a UPS driver for 28 years, delivering packages to rural communities in North Dakota. Because of the intensity of his job, he had 5 back surgeries and 2 rotator cuff surgeries. After the last surgery, Mark's doctor told him to stop working or he might lose his ability to walk. He now walks with a cane, and he relies on his pension, the pension that he earned, to help pay his medical bills. Under the proposed cuts, Mark's pension would be cut by more than 50%. You hear these stories. You hear stories about men and women who worked hard all their life, and they did the right thing. They bargained for a pension because they knew that the work that they did was not work you could do your entire life. They knew that they wanted time in retirement to enjoy their golden years. But yet today, that benefit and that security is threatened. I had a man approach me after one of the meetings where I asked people to tell me what the impacts were on the cuts, and many were able to give public testimonials. And this man came up to me afterwards, and I won't use his name because quite privately wanted to tell me that he was going to lose his house, that he was going to lose all the security that he had in the world, and that he was a grandfather helping take care of his grandchildren because his daughter couldn't afford daycare. These pension cuts don't just affect the worker. They affect the worker's family, they affect the extended family, and quite honestly, they affect our communities. But more than that, they affect our general sense of security. Our general sense that you ought to be able to rely on the goodness of your hard work, on the rewards of your hard work. But yet today, all of that is being threatened. Now, when you say, well, that's just the way it is, pension funds are in trouble, I want everyone to remember, for very many of these workers, they were basically prevented from managing their pension fund. In fact, the federal government took it away, took that pension fund away and gave it to private investment firms who squandered and wasted the principal. And they wonder why in the world, in a country where we would bail out Wall Street bankers who made bad decisions, they never get listened to. We cannot let this happen. I have been pressing Treasury Secretary Liu about this issue, and I recently met with Ken Feinberg, the Treasury official overseeing the reconstruction of this pension fund. We have to reinforce this point. We had a good conversation, and I hope the Treasury Department does the right thing by rejecting this devastating proposal and seeking a fairer option. We can and must find a solution that doesn't jeopardize retirement security or present long-term insolvency issues to the Central States Fund. This deal that has threatened the livelihood of so many of my fellow North Dakotans, people who work hard for a living, the kind of people we brag about on the floor of the Senate. We're here to represent the hardworking, good Americans who build our country. But yet, when this happens, they wonder, who is listening to them? Who do we really represent here? And so this deal has to be rejected. And we have to create an opportunity that enables all North Dakotans and American families to have the secure retirement that they earned. Dennis, Tina, Bob, and Mark, and so many other North Dakotans that I have met deserve as much. They deserve the same kind of consideration and interest that we gave to AIG, that we gave to all of the organizations that we bailed out during the 2008 crisis. Bailed out at a time when we saw record bonuses for Wall Street executives. We wonder all the time why people are mad. We don't need to look any further than this example to know that sometimes The priorities are just plain wrong. So I urge all of my colleagues to become aware of this problem, to become invested in this problem, and work with us to solve this problem. And first, the first and most significant and important step we can take is urge the Department of the Treasury to reject the current plan and take this back to the drawing board.